What's going on, my freaks and geeks? Welcome to the Square Roundtable podcast. I just want to thank you guys so much, all of our viewers and listeners on our website as well as YouTube. Thank you guys for joining us again for another amazing podcast. And you know we're about to hit you guys with some nerd stuff today, just like any other time. And guys, this is definitely a very special occasion because with us we have artist, animator, and comedian, and the creator of the short film Batman Broken Promise. Please, guys, I would love for you all to welcome Mr. Stephen Trumble.
Hi, guys. Hello.
Oh, man.
Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. Wow. Oh my God. Oh. I don't have.
I couldn't resist.
I've got his old comic books and stuff.
There you go. There you go.
I think yeah, man. Gotcha. Yeah. So wait a second. So before we even jump into that, what's your comic book collection looking like?
It's funny because I was never, I'm a depressive, which it explains comedian, but basically means that I was never the type of guy who could get individual issues of comic books because then I wouldn't treat them with respect. You know what I mean? They'd all just yeah, exactly. So I was always like a graphic novel guy. And I think this one was actually like one of the first. It was probably a gift from somebody when I was like a little boy. And so it's a bunch of Penguin and Catwoman stories, and I think Catwoman probably like started a few things on the cover. And but then mostly it was things like Long Halloween and Returns and Year One. And there was a time because do you remember Borders? Do you remember Borders Bookshop? But it doesn't exist.
Yes, they closed it like when I was in high school.
Yeah. I spent my entire teenage years going into Borders and reading comic books and not buying them. Read it like you just sit in the chair there. Yeah. So I would go and I would pick up a comic book and I would just sit in the chair and I would read the entire thing and then put it back.
Hey, I did it all the time.
Under the Hood and a lot of those kind of 90s ones, the Jim Lee Batmans and things like that. I think growing up, me and my brother were both huge Preacher fans. We had lots of the Preacher books and stuff like that. Wow. Garth Ennis's masterpiece. Also, when we were like little kids, it was all like Calvin and Hobbes and Asterix and that kind of stuff, and Tintin and things like that. And I've been drawing since I was basically 2. Me and my brother, we're twins, by the way. Yeah, so David Trumble is the voice of Two-Face, Harvey Dent and Two-Face in the film. Spoilers. But so he's my identical twin brother. Wow. So he already knows something about duality. But he and I basically, we're both artists and we both work in like storyboard art. He's a story artist working at Netflix at the moment. Nice. And I'm a freelance storyboard artist and concept artist. That's how we earn our living. But we were drawing together essentially from the age of 2 and just kind of kept going. And so people would buy us comic books to support that. But often they wouldn't realize what comics were like. So one time when I was about 7, someone bought us a big compendium of Crumb. Do you know who Crumb is? He's a grown-up. He's basically the darkest, like grown-up, a kind of social commentary indie comic books, and it's like all about like oral sex, and he's obsessed with fat women, and he's like, it's amazing stuff. Like it's really well written, good stuff that was like very famous. But this friend of the family was like, "Oh, this is a comic book. Stephen and Dave will like that." And we're opening up, we're going because it was just like
right,
like overtly sexual material. And I remember when we were kids, we saw on Blue Peter, which is this British kind of daytime show that every kid watches essentially on BBC, and they did a thing about comic books, and they said there was going to be a comic book convention in London, and so we bullied our dad to take us to London because we were in Oxford, bullied him into taking us to London, and we were like kids, we were probably like 6 or 7 or 8 or whatever, and we get there and we didn't realize that it was going to be violence and sex and all over the covers of all these things. And we're shy English guys. Like we were just kind of like, well, I thought it was going to be like the Beano, Desperate Dan, like these old like these little kids things that you get at like the corner shop, little kids comic books and stuff. And then I think it was Batman that kind of brought me back into comics because I was such a big fan of the animated series and of the old Tim Burton movies and even the Joel Schumacher movies and stuff like that. Like I was the perfect age to watch those films. And that's when I started really wanting to to know Batman and know the correct Batman, if you get what I mean. Okay, I've seen these adaptations that are clearly taking liberties here and there and all this kind of stuff. So it was like, okay, let's go and see what are the and we had a lot of friends who knew about comic books. So they would like take us in the right direction. They'd say, oh, if you want to know about Batman's backstory, you got to read Year One. Or if you want to know about Batman's future, you've got to go to The Dark Knight Returns and all this kind of stuff. And yeah. So I think I'd like to think that my comic book collection is quite varied. What else have I got? My favorite comic book at the moment is Sean Murphy's White Knight, because it's so good. Firstly, he's like my favorite comic book artist currently. Like he's probably if you asked me today, he's my favorite artist, because the things that he does with like shadow and like pitch black and negative space. He'll have a character jumping off something and then the rest of the page is just black. You know what I mean? It's gorgeous kind of like stuff. And he's such a good artist. And then he's a really talented writer. So I've got his Punk Rock Jesus. I've got a thing that he did with Grant Morrison. I've got a thing that he did with Scott Snyder, The Wake. And I'll just devour anything that was drawn by him. But then it's funny that you mentioned the Joker earlier when we were chatting, because his version of the Joker and Harley Quinn is my preferred version, because I don't like the way the Harley Quinn character was turned into this kind of essentially very overly sexualized.
Yes.
It's a very
totally agree.
It's an abusive relationship. In the animated series, it's essentially a kind of tragic gag that she's this kind of hilarious, funny, beautiful sidekick, who is Arlene Sorkin as the voice, is just so funny. She just knocks him dead. But then you get that kind of Arkham game thing where suddenly it's almost like a walking porn parody of of Batman. As much as they're awesome games, and I've definitely played them, and it's all Batman, you want to play those games, and I get it. People like to cosplay and people like all this kind of stuff, and if that's what you like, then that's what you like. But I think that the Sean Murphy's White Knight books are the first books where I think I actually got the sense, oh, this guy actually watched the show and got the character, and then managed to do something with two characters that I thought that I knew everything about, like Joker. He's such a great bad guy, but I never would have put him in my Batman film, or, at least not the first Batman film that I ever did, because I know everything about the Joker. Like I know so much about the Joker. There's been like a whole film telling us unnecessary backstory about the Joker.
Right.
It's basically because the Joker is basically Han Solo. He's a character that doesn't need an origin film, because both the Joker and Han Solo show up and everything about them the second they show up. You don't need to know anything else. But because production company is, okay, what's the most popular character? Han Solo, the Joker. That will make money.
They give you a film, exactly.
But that's why they're the most popular character. Han Solo is the most popular character because he shows up and he's like a space cowboy and everything about him. But then White Knight, I haven't read the most recent one, the Beyond the White Knight, because again, I like a graphic novel, so I'm waiting for it to be. I'm waiting to get it as a full trade paperback. I didn't want to get a bunch of issues and destroy them.
Same way. I'm the same way.
Yeah, but he managed to take the Joker and Harley and actually do something that felt true to them, but also like I found them interesting again for the first time in years. Absolutely, I highly recommend it. I'd say that definitely. And then I recently ordered the new Nightwing book and Batman Imposter. I think that's a new one, where they're obviously trying to go in a slightly new direction.
Yeah, I saw that. I seen something about it.
Yeah, I think I've got a lot of like comic books, but they're all graphic novels, and I love a graphic novel. They're all graphic novels. I love like the smell of a graphic novel. Like it's almost a bit hard to say, but I can smell the dead trees. You know what I mean? Like,
you can. That's exactly great description.
And I just love the weight. Like,
would not be happy, but it's like
not at all. No.
Yeah, like I remember when I got the Long Halloween for the first time.
Yes, I just got that too.
It's such a big book, and
yes.
It was like this kind of pain. It's like pain. It's beautiful. So yeah, no. So I think there's probably a bunch of comic books that are like lost in piles somewhere. But yeah, most of the comic books, they're nearly all DC. I've got a few Marvels and stuff, and I like Marvel stuff, but I feel like the films are smashing it enough these days that I already know I've got all the content I need from them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, whereas it's like Batman was like my gateway drug into comics. So really, I'm more of a Batman fan. It's a weird thing to say, but it's almost like I'm more of a Batman fan than a comic book fan, which is funny. because he is a comic book character, and I do love comics, but he's the gateway drug, and I think he is for a lot of people. I think that's why he's the most popular character in like literature, essentially.
No, seriously.
My first fine answer. You literally just said, "What are you reading right now?" And I went and talked for 20 minutes.
No, that's perfect, man.
That's perfect, exactly.
But yeah, like it's interesting. You say how he's like, basically that's how you were introduced to Batman, because like for me it's like the opposite. Like I was more introduced to Batman in like the video games and stuff, because I'm not really too huge on comics, but I mostly got my perspective for Batman on the Arkham games. And especially my perception of Harley. So it's interesting that Harley wasn't really supposed to be a sexual character.
No, but there were touches of it, because the guys who created Batman the animated series were dirty bastards, like in a beautiful way. They're very kind of it's almost like a kind of 1950s pinup, isn't it? Like kind of stuff.
Pretty much.
And then once you get to Justice League Unlimited, all the characters are horny as fuck. Have you ever watched that show? It is the thirstiest show I've ever seen, but in a beautiful way. It's actually really beautiful. But I completely see what you mean. Yeah, and she didn't wear, like, she was full body. You only saw like her face was the only, and that was covered in face paint. So every now and again you'd see her with the pigtails or whatever when she was hanging out with Ivy or whatever. But yeah, no, so it's interesting that.
And they focus in the animated series, they focus more on her as Dr. Quinzel. They actually showed how she became Harley Quinn, and like how intelligent she was, and how she really was fond of the Joker and why and stuff. So like they built the character a little bit more instead of like in the films where she's like already Harley. And whenever they talk about that, it's like a quick flashback. So that's why for us, Josh, like we say that because we actually know what she's exactly supposed to be. And it's funny, Stephen, because I always say, I think when we did a Suicide Squad, the second one, we did a review on it, and we talked about it. And I was telling them, I was like, I was just happy this time they didn't over sexualize her. They still did, but I was just glad they turned it down a little bit.
I feel, and I think that's Margot Robbie's influence, because she strikes me as a really thoughtful and smart person, and she produced her own films and things like that. So I think she has, and she's even been on an interview saying, "Oh, she wants to get Poison Ivy into the films and stuff like that." And it's like in my head, the idea of doing a Harley Quinn movie at all and not having Poison Ivy in it doesn't make any sense.
It's crazy. I was like, why don't
I just rewatched the first season of that Poison Ivy show, the one that had lots of swearing in it and stuff.
Oh, with her and Harley Quinn. Yeah, I just watched that, finished that, and it was great actually.
First I was like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of like when they throw like really adult humor into it. But I watched it recently and I was like, it's actually really good. And it's mostly because of Lake Bell's voice acting of Poison Ivy, because she takes all that, like, again, because Poison Ivy is another character that's been over-sexualized so much. Like the whole point of her character originally was just to be this kind of male fantasy. But then you get Lake Bell in, who is an incredibly beautiful, sexy woman, but with this amazing deadpan voice, and she just shows it like, and you just immediately you're like, oh, I get it. She's like this amazing dry character who is like, who hates humanity. You know what I mean?
Does. She can't stand in that show.
So like, why would she be like draping herself over things and things like that? Like, she's no, I fucking hate you. Like, you know, like, I love that. I think that's really cool. So yeah, no, I agree with you. It's good that they're going back into they're pulling that back a bit. I think they tried that with Suicide Squad and it just didn't work. They thought it was going to work. And it didn't. You can't really do the Arkham games as live action.
It doesn't cross over well.
Well, did you see that video where I think it's on TikTok or something, where they changed the skins of the characters for Batman and Catwoman? They did one of the cutscenes where Batman's talking to Catwoman, and they went in, they hacked it, and they made it so that the animation was different. Was like they flipped it. So Catwoman's walking like this, and Batman's going,
no, I didn't even see it.
Like that, you know. And you're like, this is what women in comics have to put up with, man.
Right. Like you get to see how dumb it looks. It's just
Exactly.
It doesn't work, you know. But then also you can have the Batman and have Zoe Kravitz in it being amazing and sexy and playing a three-dimensional character and doing it really well. Yeah, so I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, but I think there was a time where people thought, oh, it's okay, we just got to make things sexy and people will come and watch it. And I guess they did, but still.
They did, but it's just like at what expense? Like I was talking about, it's pretty cool that you mentioned seeing a body of work in cinema or whatever, and you being like, oh, okay, so obviously this person didn't read the comics or doesn't care about getting people into the comics. Because you were talking about the recent Batman movie and how that's doing well. But so do you think there would need to be like a total overhaul of the DC extended universe? Because you still have, I don't know if they're going to make it, but there's still a Flash movie somewhere out there
it's
in
fully
the ether.
They have 2 films that they can't release because cast members are mired in controversy. Like it's like it has to be the head of DC right now. It must be a nightmare because
It's gotta be.
Imagine like you're just like, oh, I need to hire some actors. Oh, that guy seems like a good actor. There's nothing obviously wrong with this person. You never know. It's gotten to the point now where people are so hyper focused on stuff like that, it's almost impossible to make a film where, because it takes so long to make a film, anything could happen in that. Here's the thing, DC has got to give, it would be amazing if they could just like New 52 everything, but I think because at the moment, here's the thing that I said, I think I said this in a different, someone was talking to me about it and I said this as well, so I'm repeating myself here, but there's going to be like an Amanda Waller show. There's an Alfred Pennyworth show of Alfred who was like 20. And it's like, why? And it's like this weird thing where DC has twisted itself so much into knots that it's trying to backdoor pilot of a backdoor pilot of a backdoor pilot to get back into, because really what they need is a good Batman film, a good Wonder Woman film, a good Superman film, and some Green Lantern maybe, and that's it. You've got your extended universe.
Yeah.
But they don't have that because they tried a bunch of things and things went sideways on them. And it means now that like, how can we get back to there, but without having to reset everything? So let's go into all the little characters like Peacemaker and
let's give them a show.
And we'll slowly like tiny like side character our way back into a main product. And
that's so weird.
I'm not sure if it's possible. It's one of those things where I feel like when Marvel obviously created the kind of the franchise structure. Okay, you get Iron Man, then you get Thor, Captain America, Hulk, and boom, you got the Avengers. So that's 4 films. DC tried to do it in 2 films. You know what I mean?
They really did. They absolutely did.
They were super lazy.
In 2 films, and it's just, dude, all you had to do was make 4 good films, and those films would have made loads of money. Like Wonder Woman was a great film. It should have come first. It should have come second. You should have done Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, then about
full Batman, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then we could have actually got a Dark Knight Returns Batman without trying to force like 4 stories into one movie. Like they did Death of Superman, Dark Knight Returns, probably something else. It was like, I was like, man, what is going on right now?
Yeah, like, and I'm not even like bad mouthing those movies because I know that there's a lot that love them, and there's a lot of people that really love those films. But it's not even the quality of the films. It's more just that they've shot themselves in the foot by trying to skip the process. 4 good movies. You just got to make 4 good movies. It's not difficult. I mean, it is difficult. I don't know why I said that.
No, you're right, Stephen. It's not difficult. Let them know.
Is you take characters that you know what they're like and you put them in stories. It's not that difficult. And then you can do whatever you want with them. But I think without that foundation, I'm not sure, because isn't it that they're trying to work out a way of putting Batman and Superman back on Front Street. That's what I heard, that they're like trying to. But I think that they might have to do like a full system reset.
They're gonna have to, because and here's why I say it's all over the place, because like you said, and they do have like little sparks of like success, because Peacemaker, by all how that show operates, is a great show. It's really good. I love Peacemaker. I like the Suicide Squad, the rebooted Suicide Squad that came before that. But these characters are still in that extended universe with Aquaman and all of this other,
the increasing roster of
right. But we have no intentions on making a Batfleck movie though. So that's where I'm just like, that's the part that's killing me. And then we have my guys over there getting in trouble, Flash dude, and I don't know what that movie is going to be about. But then now we're bringing Michael Keaton back for some reason, and I'm just like,
I mean, that's cool.
That's cool.
I'm excited to see him again, but it does feel almost like it's like the Spider-Man No Way Home but without the kind of celebration that Spider-Man No Way Home had, because Spider-Man No Way Home actually managed to, that said, I haven't seen this Flash movie yet, so maybe it's amazing and does the nostalgia really well.
Right.
But like Spider-Man No Way Home managed to make it so that it still had a storyline, which was really amazing. Right. And like they didn't forget that Tom Holland's still the main character, but they still gave all the other characters like really good arcs and plot lines, and so it felt. Whereas I don't know, you can't just like, multiverse isn't just a way of getting out of an awkward situation.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Right. It's not a fail safe.
Right. And I'm thinking like
the ultimate hedging of your bets, essentially. The last line of the Flash movie is going to be like, Flash then died on the way back to his home planet, and a new Flash comes out of the multiverse.
There you go. Boom, fixed.
That's it.
Yeah. I know it's tough, man. But then, like, I think I have a good friend, Liam H. Dempsey. He's a kind of radio host and podcaster over here in the UK. Good friend of mine, and he loves comic books. And he said that he liked the idea that films could become like comic books, in that you can have Elseworld, you can have like different artists. So that's why he didn't have a problem with the Joker movie. He was like, if you don't like that, then it's fine. It's a one-off. It's a one-shot done by a different.
Supposed to be.
Exactly. So, and that's why the Matt Reeves Batman film doesn't upset me that it's not part of the continuity or whatever. It's its own thing. Because, as I say, my favorite Batman story at the moment is Sean Murphy's White Knight. So it's its own universe. It's the Murphy-verse or whatever they call it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And then if you think about like, my thing, it's like I try to treat Batman Broken Promise as if, I've been given the chance to write one comic book, an Elseworld story or whatever, and it's just one story. It doesn't really have to affect the continuity. Just imagine it's like a day in the life of Batman. It's what would you do? And that's how it could be in movies. I think it's just the Marvel model was so successful that everyone felt they had to do that. Whereas really, you could just make good films. Like you don't go to the cinema and see Back to the Future and then be upset that it doesn't tie into Gremlins. Like it all works. You could just like both films. Okay.
Marvel just messed it up for everybody, that now moviegoers are expected to be like, okay, so where's the connection? How does this connect? I think Dmitri is smart, because he says something about nobody even really cares about the movie anymore. They just want to see the post-credit scene to see how everything
connects. Everybody's post-credit scene. What is it? Like, even when the movie comes out on YouTube, it's already post-credit scene. What does it mean? I'm like, what about the movie?
Like the thing that actually upsets me the most about that is the fact that I don't think it's possible to see an unspoiled movie.
Oh yeah, you can forget that. Yeah,
that there was a COVID spike in London, so I wasn't going to the cinema when Spider-Man No Way Home came out. But it's okay, because I know everything about that film like 5 months prior, because people in the world somehow think that it's a good thing to know what's in the film. You know? Like it's crazy. I don't know. I don't know who. I don't understand why people. I don't understand the people that want to know what's going to be in the film. Why are we so obsessed with it? It must be some deep-rooted psychological thing, but
it just takes away from the experience for me.
I just wish I could go see a film and genuinely
not know anything.
And if there's a twist, I'll know that there's going to be a twist. They'll be like, "Oh, the twist is really
here.
Good.
It comes." Like, right. I mean, because you can't even have social media. It's like as soon as like you were saying when Spider-Man came out, as soon as I opened my YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, I saw like Tom Holland hugging the other Spider-Man. I'm like, I know they're in the movie now. So
exactly, because in my head, I had this image in my head of all the people that had been following. Is Toby in the movie? Is Andrew in the movie? Oh, the villains are definitely in the movie. Is this one in the movie? And they're like learning about it for like basically a year beforehand. I had this image of them watching the film going, "Aha! I knew that was going to happen." And then like at the end of the film, The Graduate, where they're on the bus and then they're studying, and they just realize that they've done nothing. That it's a hollow feeling of, okay, now what do I do with my life?
Let's spoil the next movie.
I just feel like this kind of emptiness, this kind of, what must the experience of watching the movie have been like for them? Because I know my experience in the movie was good, but it was definitely mired by the fact that I knew everything about it.
You knew it.
Here's the scene where he saves MJ, and here's the scene where this happens, and it's just like, and the trailers lean into that as well.
Oh, hard. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I worked really hard I say I worked really hard like I'm a studio. I'm just a guy making it. Nobody's trying to hack my laptop. But we made very sure not to put the villains in the trailers. We made like one trailer that we dropped a month before the film. So nobody even knew that it was happening. Like, it's a product that nobody needs. Nobody needs this fan film. It's just something that I happened to spend 2 years of my life on, and now it's on the internet. But when we did the trailer, it was like, okay, shots of Batman beating up people and maybe a shot of a coin spinning on the floor, but only a few people picked up on the fact that it was going to be Harvey. And somebody saw like the kind of reddish orange side of the face in one shot and then thought it was Deathstroke, and I was like, oh no, mate, it's not Deathstroke, you're gonna be so disappointed. And then we did a trailer for a week away and then a trailer for 1 day away, and in those we actually put lines of dialogue from the film from Two-Face and Arnold Wesker, but you couldn't tell what character. And again, I really didn't want people to be playing a guessing game of, oh, okay, it's definitely going to be this character and this character. You said when we were first talking that Scarface is one of your favorite villains. Now, how did you feel when he was revealed? Could you tell it was going to be him before the light hit him, or what was your experience of him being revealed in the?
Pretty much picked up on it because of the voice. It was just so I was just, because I'm like I said, that whole gangster tone, and then I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, that's my boy. And then when it like so yeah, I was completely hyped, and I love the design, by the way, of Scarface.
Yes, I love the design. Yes.
Yeah, so but and that's go ahead. What are you about to say?
Do you think you enjoyed it better than you would have if you knew he was going to be in the film, is the question?
Oh yeah, completely, because I'm not really I guess I'm kind of like you, like when you were talking about with Spider-Man, like if I see it, okay, but in most situations I just rather not be spoiled. Like, I want the surprise. So I definitely enjoyed it.
I'd rather just not knowing films were being made. I want you to just tell me the film, oh, by the way, they made a new Batman film, it's out next week.
It's out now, right?
Exactly. I'm perfectly fine with that.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to become like an old man who doesn't use technology to avoid the situation.
But it's crazy because that's how your short was, because it literally just popped up in my like search stuff. Like I told him before we started, I was like, I'm just on my stuff looking at my interest stuff, and of course something Batman is always going to pop up regardless. And I'm just scrolling, and then I'm on Instagram, I'm like, what is this? Like, it literally came out of nowhere. And I was like, finally, something I didn't know about, and now I want to know about it. And I immediately sent it out to them, and I was like, yo, look at this, y'all. Like, I know this is going to be dope, because nobody knows about it but us. I thought we was like the only people in the world.
Yeah, you probably were. I remember one of my favorite reactions, because there's been like a smattering of reaction videos to the film. Please do more if you're out there, because we love them. We love watching them. But my favorite was, there was this one guy who, like, halfway through the kind of credits just went, who the fuck is this guy? I loved it. I was like, wow, it's such a great, imagine being that. Just, who is this guy? This YouTube channel didn't exist 2 months ago.
Right. That's pretty much like how we felt, because it was just, everything just appeared out of nowhere, and like I said, it was so like put together. Because the thing that I like to always talk to the guys about is because I'm a Marvel fan too, but I love DC, and I love the way they handle their villains. And the thing that I think a lot of people gloss over when talking about villains like the Joker and, like you said, like Arnold and all of these guys, these are guys that aren't just robbing and stealing and killing because they just love it, because of no reason whatsoever. It's something, they all have that mental illness factor. And I'm glad with your story that you actually took the time to look at that duality, because both, like Scarface and Two-Face, they let these inanimate objects make the decision for them. And that's the thing that Batman was trying to get through to Harvey. He was like, hey, man, you're a prisoner, bro. And when he said that, I was just like, that's what I'm talking about.
That was some great dialogue, dude. Oh my God. And then I got to give you like 100% props. because I don't think I've never seen nobody do this. So I think you were the first, and they should give you all the props in the world for giving Batman the magnet to catch the coin.
Yes.
When I seen that, I was like, yes, because I thought for all
That
these
was
years, why
crazy.
Batman couldn't just come up with a way to just stop him from flipping that stupid coin.
Exactly.
And you did it. So I appreciate you for that.
Thank you so much. I mean, some people in the comments have been like, wait a minute, silver is like only like small level of magnetism or whatever. And they were like, it wouldn't work. Like you have a magnet. Have you ever seen a magnet that looks like that? It's clearly like some piece of Wayne tech that he's like,
they don't get it. It's Batman. He can come up with something.
The way I think about it is that like Batman he knows Two-Face. So if the one thing we know about Batman is that he has been planning how to solve every problem throughout his whole life. So he's okay, I've run up against Two-Face so many times. I need to get the coin away from him. How can I do it? And he's obviously invested time and energy. He's had this plan. And so the idea that I always love is that, again, this comes a lot from the animated series as well, which is that kind of, I wanted to do a Batman where he doesn't do or say anything for no reason. He always goes in prepared. He always has a plan. And he goes in with a kind of compassion, and he goes in with a kind of, the bit where he appears out of the shadows and he's just stood there in front of Harvey. He could have just taken Harvey out in the shadows. Yes. And there was one of the most common, it's really funny to me actually at this point, because it's like one of the most common, because there's been so many lovely comments about the film, but the only like thing that keeps getting said again is, wait a minute, how is Two-Face as good at fighting as Batman? And firstly, they haven't read the comics where Harvey Dent was trained by Batman, and I think Deathstroke as well. So he's already, but then also in the animated series, he's always like this big guy, and he's, even before he gets scarred in the animated series, he's taken out thugs. Like he's like really really huge.
He's a district attorney, man.
But also he's tough, and he's friends with Bruce, and Batman taught him how to fight. And then not only that, but the way we had it be with the coin being taken away is that when you take away his coin, he's just unleaded. He's like unleaded hate. He just, because he has no structure. So it just becomes this thing. And it's like, there was one line of dialogue that I wanted to put in, but I couldn't find a place for it. And it's the type of line that I would only be able to use if it was a comic book, because it would be like in Batman's little inner monologue, which would be, Harvey's big, he's strong, he's got a strong reach, he's got a mean left, hook. He's like trying to talk about the fight while he's doing it. And it would be like, it's hard to fight a guy when even he doesn't know what he's going to do next. It's that unpredictability. Ooh. So everything he does in the fight he just shows up out of the shadows and just starts punching Batman in the face with his left hand about as many times as he can. And then he throws him into a pillar. He does this bit where Batman punches him and he spins around and like elbows him with the other half of him. But he's alternating between these two. He's so unpredictable, and he's like pure rage and unpredictability. And Batman loves him. He doesn't want to fight him. It's like having a fight with your brother. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
And also it's so funny when a lot of people in comics are very obsessed with the fight stats, aren't they? Very like, this guy's better than this guy. Firstly, it's a piece of drama. You want a boss fight because he's a rogue, so he deserves boss. He deserves to have a boss fight. But the way I talked about it with the actors when we were doing the dialogue, because sometimes I would even work out what was happening based on the vocal performances. Like my brother sent me like 20 minutes of him screaming. Such a full-blooded. So it's almost like he's a live action performance, because he was just like, I think he's a big fan of John Bernthal's performance of the Punisher in the Netflix shows, because there's a few times where so I would try and work out the fight from there. And I think I like the idea that the fight is a fight that didn't even need to happen. It's Batman wanted to give Harvey the choice to stop. So wins the battle before the fight even starts, because he presents by showing himself to Harvey, he presents an alternative choice. He says, you can stop right now. And then Two-Face gets out his coin and he's like that. And so when Two-Face flips the coin, Two-Face doesn't even realize that now the coin has two choices. One is kill Batman and the other is stop. Whereas before it would just be kill Batman, don't kill Batman. But because Batman engaged him in conversation, oral conversation, the choice has changed. So Batman has basically taken a kind of a thankless task and added a 50% chance of a positive outcome. So it's like one of those things where everyone gets bogged down in like who would win, who's strongest. And firstly, Two-Face can't kill Batman because the coin hasn't told him he can. So he can't kill him. He's just punching him as hard as he can. And Batman can't kill Harvey because Batman can't kill anyone. Batman has to not kill anyone. So it's a fight where everyone can't kill the other, which is fascinating to me. Kind of like how the whole idea of the fight came about was like, imagine having a fight with someone where you couldn't kill them, but it's really intense.
Right.
Like that's that when the coin's spinning on the ground and Two-Face is like getting his guns ready because he's like, in about 10 seconds, I'm gonna be able to kill him. So he's like trying to get ready, but he's still in the middle of this kind of frantic fight. And then when he finally gets the gun on him, it's that question of I now have a choice. I either break out of the jail and shoot Batman, which in a way would be progress. If he like so in a way, I like the idea that Batman almost wanted him to do it because it would mean that he was cured. That's why he's just stood there. He stood there because firstly, he's probably seen that the coin's gone good. So in a way, like, okay, I know Harvey enough. I think he's gonna stop. But on the other hand, if Harvey had shot him, then Harvey would have been cured because he would have made a decision without the coin. It's like Batman has always been a character who's willing to put himself in harm's way over other people. And I think there was a lot of choices that had to be made in terms of, it was basically just a case of thinking about the character of what are his moral choices, both of them in fact, and how can we make a scene that actually stays true to all those things? You know what I mean? Because how many times do you watch a film based on a comic book and it'll be Batman does something really dangerous, and then you'll see a bunch of comments going, I thought Batman didn't kill and now he's doing something really dangerous, you know, like, so it's because people are so obsessed with things being cool that they'll just throw in a bunch of cool shit, you know what I mean? And often it kind of slightly goes against the ethos of the character. So it was fun to be like, okay, you can't do this thing, which would be really cool, and you can't do this thing that would be really cool. What can you do? So it was like all the scenes were constructed in that kind of way of, okay, I'm Batman, I can't kill Harvey, how can I save Harvey? Or if I'm Harvey, I can't kill Batman, how can I show my rage? And all that kind of stuff. Again, I'm waffling. Is this interesting at all?
No, it's really cool.
It's really, go ahead, Josh.
I was saying
you guys
and I was like I like really liked how all the characters are only limited to like how they function in the comics. Like Scarface tried to, I guess, change Harvey's mind about, well, I don't really change his mind, but I guess make Harvey not really rely on the coin to make a decision. Because I guess Scarface tried to get off the hook with Harvey by helping him out, and Harvey was like, "Nah, I'm not gonna do that. Your fate totally depends on this coin."
Yeah, it's all down to because the way I came up with the whole project wasn't even I'm going to make a 15-minute film. I was literally just animating a fun fight scene, and then it got out of hand. Basically over 2 years. So the way it happened was I thought, okay, it was the scenes with the strip lights in the kind of warehouse area where he's taking out lights. I was just doing that for fun. And then there was this thought, which was just like, oh, I really want Two-Face to be in it. Shit. So then I added Two-Face. and then it just snowballed from there. And then Scarface actually showed up quite late in the day, like halfway through, so like a year in. And the funny thing is, I think the reason why the story holds up as well as it does is because I think I've been thinking about the characters for years. So I've been thinking about Harvey and his coin. I'm always like, okay, what if it went good? Because nobody ever really shows that. It's 50% chance. Like it should happen all the time. It's because people think, I guess in storytelling, the most dramatic thing for Harvey to do is to flick the coin and it's bad heads, because then you get like a gunfight. Whereas like for me, it's like he flicks the coin and then it says good. What's he gonna do? You know,
exactly. He's not gonna do anything.
Like imagine
he's about to go home.
He's in the middle of a drug deal and he's like, oh damn, I put a lot of work into this deal.
And I can't do it.
How many phone calls I had to make to get this deal. So that immediately is more interesting to me. It's the same thing with Captain America, I think, because Captain America is another character. I think Captain America is quite similar to Two-Face in that he's so moral. he can't compromise. Instead of making Captain America, instead of making him a boring character, it makes him a really interesting character. I think it makes him a more interesting character than Tony Stark, because Tony Stark is he's great. He's a lot of fun. He's the Han Solo, but he can do anything. He's so free. And he just makes mistakes all the time. Whereas Cap can't. Cap is just, oh, I saw this thing that's wrong. I can't. It's wrong. I can't. I have to step up. I have to do something. And
I got to do something about it.
I think that's how you could make a really good Superman film, because Superman is another character who's just, if Superman sees someone getting mugged in the street, I can't allow that. I've got to go do that. And then if you have like this person suffering over here and this person suffering over here, and he has to get in between the two, like it's more interesting because he can't compromise. He's too good a character.
I always say this, and Chad and Josh, we all agree on this, but I always thought that Man of Steel was an underrated Superman film because they did such a good job with showing that where he had to make choices. And my favorite scene is when they flash back to when the tornado comes and he wants to go save his dad and he knows he can save him, and he's no, because you have to. I told you not to do it, and you got to listen to me because I'm your father, and at the same time I know what I'm doing. I got to make that sacrifice, and they showed it so well. And also, like, just you talking about Two-Face and like Batman and how he approached the villains. That's like, when I watched it, I immediately said, before I even knew who he was, I said, this dude is a fan of the animated series. Because in the animated series, he always approached a situation with the, decision of, okay, how can I get this person to not do this? Or how can I talk? Like, he never went in, oh, I'm just going to beat the crap out of them until they tell me. So it was always like, what can I do to either save this person or save somebody else? And he did it especially a lot with Harvey. He had the one with the girl, with the lady who was like trapped as a little girl. Even on to like
Baby doll.
Even on to like the Justice League series. One of my favorite ones is with Ace, when she's telling him she's about to die, and Batman just literally sits there with her until she dies. Wow. And that's one of the best.
It is one of the best episodes. Oh my God.
So
and also, I definitely, there's literally an episode of the animated series, the first series of it, I think, literally called "It's Never Too Late." That's an amazing episode about him basically reforming a crime boss. Like, basically, like, it's like the Godfather, but he makes Marlon Brando turn state's evidence.
Exactly.
It's amazing because he does something that I've never seen in a cartoon ever. Like, it wasn't that kind of like, kids stay in school kind of thing. It was like he takes the crime boss to a drug rehabilitation center where the crime boss's son is going cold turkey. And he shows him, and he's, I didn't do this, you did this to your own son. You know what I mean? And there's no swearing, there's no blood really in the show. Like, it's like that they tried as hard they could to get certain things into the show or not, but it is still a kid's show. That idea that Batman, I mean, like, he'll punch a guy, especially if the guy draws a gun, but there's something that's inherently compassionate about him, I think.
And that's what a lot of people miss, because that's what I really liked about your short, because you were talking about what he did with Harvey. He did it twice, and he even would do it in the animated series, because I've watched like all the episodes with Scarface, and he would try his hardest to get through to Arnold. Like, when he grabbed him, he was like, hey man, come on, all of this is in your head, what's going on, help me out. And once again, you got a guy that has this conviction to where he disassociates from the crimes that his puppet does. He's unwilling to say, yeah, it's me, even though and to go as far as to shoot the dummy. It's like, what? So it's just cool, man. I get super excited about it because I just love that kind of, like I said, that duality between like what your characters had. That's why I thought for sure, I was like, I know this was like something you had thought about for a minute, because those two characters, I didn't see it before, but they're really the same guy. Two-Face and Arnold, the same person.
Which I'm actually quite proud of as well, because often when you think about pairing villains together, you think about different villains that would contrast each other, like fill in the gap. You have Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy, something like that. But in my head, I was like, wait a minute, it's actually more interesting if you have two villains Firstly, I like saying, why have two villains when you could have four villains? And also, if you actually look at the credits, the top three characters are all dual roles. You've got Harvey Dent, Two-Face, Arnold Wesker, Scarface, Batman, Bruce Wayne. You know what I mean? So all three of the main characters are double roles. And even Brian Vaughan, who does the voice of Batman, there are lines where I said, do this line as Batman, and then there are lines where I said, do this line as Bruce. You know what I mean? Even though you never see, Bruce isn't actually in the film. He's always in the batsuit. So you could almost say like his coin or his puppet is the suit. It's a thing that he can't escape from in a way. I might just draw Bruce on Instagram or something like that, because I haven't actually got a design for him. I haven't actually drawn Bruce.
Really?
Just drawn Batman. But yeah, in saying what you mentioned before about trying to save Arnold and all this kind of stuff, there are several moments. In fact, there's multiple moments in the film where Batman saves a villain. You know what I mean? So when Two-Face and his gang essentially assassinate Arnold, Batman swipes him out of the way. He doesn't need to do that. If you were a crime fighter and some mob boss betrays another mob boss, you're not going to lose a lot of sleep over it. You know what I mean? Okay, no, I've got to save Arnold.
Right.
Even though it's going to put me slightly behind, it's going to put me on the back foot a bit, but there's no way I'm letting Arnold, if I can save him, there's no way. And then when the Batmobile comes through the wall, he saved Two-Face from his own Batmobile. Like he could have just creamed him, you know. He really could have just creamed him. And it's almost like that's his plan is, you know, it's like, I'm going to steal the coin, Batmobile's going to come through the wall, and I'm going to have to save Harvey from the Batmobile. And that's the way I confuse everyone in the room. You know what I mean? And then the moment Two-Face has got the gun on him, it's like, fuck, I can't kill him. You know what I mean? And it's his plan involves saving his enemy in his plan. It's fun, though, to come up with a plot where it's I think I've heard people say this before about creativity, which is that restrictions are good. Like the more restricted you are, the more creative you are. You know, if you completely open yourself, even things like the Star Wars prequels or whatever, where they could do anything, breed creativity. And I think it was really interesting to be like, okay, Batman can't kill anyone. So that's a restriction. Everything he does has to have a reason. It has to be, he can't just hit a guy in the face so hard that the guy dies. It has to be like, I almost wish I'd put more bits in where he saves goons, just random goons. Like I'd love to have seen him knock a goon. The goon starts to fall out the window and he just grabs him. Just because, I'm not going to let you fall out the window. I'm going to punch you again, but I'm not going to let you fall out the window. That's interesting to me, because you have to, like, if Batman was real, he'd have to make those choices every single day.
Every single time, yeah.
Every time he steps
He's constantly pulling punches.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Constantly pulling punches. And that's another reason why Harvey keeps getting the better of him a bit in the fight scene as well, because he's always pulling his punches when it comes to Harvey. A big episode that was really influential to me was an episode called Second Chance from the animated series.
Yes.
That's the one where Harvey gets kidnapped when he's about to have surgery to get his face fixed. And he gets kidnapped. So Batman goes on this detective story to try and work out who kidnapped Harvey. And it turns out that Two-Face kidnapped Harvey. But that ends with a proper fisticuff scenes between Bats and Harvey, where he switches his coin so that his coin always lands on it. So that's like another way of neutralizing the coin. He's trying to get him to make the choice. And again, Two-Face can't do it. And then after that, he was always depicted pretty much as a kind of out and out villain. You know?
Right, pretty much.
No, I find those stories so fascinating. I'm glad that you guys like vibed on that, because that's what I want to see in my Batman. I want to see him struggling to do the right thing.
Seriously, because everybody thinks that, and I won't say everybody, but I hear it so much, you know, that, and and a lot of people joke around that if you were in Gotham and you just like litter, Batman will jump out of the bushes and just beat the crap out of you. But
exactly.
People miss the fact that, like you said, he's a really considerate person. He tries not to take it there. And I like to see depictions of Batman where he puts himself out there, not so much second guessing, but like you said, in a way, he's Bruce. He's in the bat suit, but he just like where he tells he's having that conversation with Two-Face, and he's having that situation where he's basically, hey man, you thinking this coin sets you free, and
Mm.
you're really a prisoner in your own mind. And it's like the same choice and the same decision that you have to make every day, I have to make that same decision too. I'm no different than you. We're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, he's literally like sharing. And that's another thing that like Kevin Conroy nails when he's Batman, because
absolutely,
like a word that I keep thinking of when I think of Kevin Conroy is vulnerability. Like his Batman could actually be vulnerable in the cowl. You know what I mean? Because sometimes he'll be like, I'm Batman and I'm this and I'm that and I'm scumbag. Like he's like that kind of guy. But then every now and again he'll be like, and he'll be like, and he'll be like, he got gassed by Scarecrow and he's Alfred. I need someone to give me a hug. Yeah, exactly. So I think that really helped Brian, the guy who played Batman. He has a kind of
amazing job.
Thanks, man, because he has a kind of Kylo Ren voice in real life. Like he's basically got he's very polite. He's got a very deep voice, and he's just a really nice guy. And he had a kind of innate decency that I needed, because originally I was going to do the voice of Batman because I was so scared to involve anybody else in this. I knew my brother could nail Two-Face, because my brother actually dressed up as Two-Face at a birthday party we had in university, where we all basically all my friends dressed up as Batman villains, and David did one side of his face completely blue, and he literally did this the whole night. And he would walk around talking to people like this for the whole night, and it was amazing.
That's what's up.
So I already knew he could do it. Like it was never like a question in my head. It was like, oh, my brother's going to be Harvey. He'll be great. And he loves like the shouting and the screaming. And I knew he was going to go like above and beyond what was necessary. But then Brian is an actor friend of my brother's, who I'd actually never met. But all I knew about him was that he was this lovely kind of actor guy with this really deep voice who likes craft beer. And he has like a couple of newborn kids. And he's like this proper kind of unironically decent person. And I think I have a voice. I'm a stand-up comedian from London, so I can do a kind of impression of Kevin Conroy, but it's mired by a kind of self-aware self-loathing. So like I could do Batman, but it's always a bit like, oh, it doesn't. I would listen to it back and I'd be like, oh. And then I was like, what if a guy who is actually an actor, who is also like an all-American good person, and he could be unironically heroic? And I think that's when you get those lines where I made a promise too. He really can invest it with that stuff.
You can believe it. Yeah,
he was great. I was really happy with that. And I think that a lot of people, like you say, a lot of people just want Batman to be like just like a psycho, and he is a bit of a psycho, but he's not. I think it's like, again, I'd rather see a Batman that was doing the right thing with a lot of difficulty than a guy who's really good at doing bad things, which is what a lot of people want him to be. They want him to be a guy who's so good at hurting people, and he does it all the time. It's Batman. So he goes around and he hurts people really well all the time. And that's the story.
Well, that's an incredibly one-sided Batman.
I love Batman punching a guy as much as anyone else, but I also want him to go through, like even in the animated series, when Two-Face gets scarred, Kevin Conroy does that line where he turns him over and he goes, Harvey, like that in the bat suit. And he's got this incredible vulnerability, which I think is why people love Kevin Conroy. I don't think people love Kevin Conroy just because he sounds tough. I think they love him because you fall in love with him. But he's such a soulful voice. Yes. And that was very much what I wanted to go with. He in Broken Promise, there's one "where is he" moment, and then everything else is mostly whispers. Again, he doesn't talk flippantly, and he mostly just whispers. You only hear him like 5 minutes into the film. He spends most of the time just walking around silently, and then he shows up and says ventriloquist in the shadows, and that's like his first. So I really wanted to show that side of Batman, because to me I think that is Batman. It's the Ace thing. You want to believe he's the Batman who could sit down next to Ace and talk to her. And I'm not saying that like people like Batfleck can't do that, because Batfleck has his moments too.
Right.
I think it could be the kids who are raised on the Arkham games. All they really know about Batman is he's really good at punching guys. Not that those games don't have like great drama in them as well, but I think it gave some kids like a kind of a slightly unbalanced view of what his like main deal is. Anyway, there's so many different Batman.
Oh yeah, definitely. And being one of those kids that was like I got my biggest perception of Batman from the Arkham games. It's not just because Batman is extremely good at punching people, but like one thing I loved about the Arkham games that you captured perfectly in your short is the environment. And Batman is snooping around the city.
Yeah.
And
Oh
like,
man,
that real,
it was so hard not to just copy the landscapes. Like I was like, oh, I want to put the penguin, the iceberg lounge in. And I
Iceberg
was like,
Lounge, yeah.
oh, I can't just put the iceberg lounge as it is in, because you'd just be copying it. But because they did that world so well, didn't they? Like, you know, you got like,
yes.
got Olympus and all these amazing little references just shoved in there and stuff. Oh man, yeah, no, Arkham City is my game for that. And
hands
I
down,
could just spend all day just walking around. And although my girlfriend makes fun of me because the one time she saw me playing it, I was like talking to a refugee, and I started trying to punch the refugee because I didn't realize the refugee was a refugee. And so now she's just, man, he just hates refugees. He's just always running around trying to kill refugees. You know what I mean? She always knows how to push button. Yeah, my girlfriend, actually, I'll give her a shout out, is actually Claire Wiggs, who wrote the score for the Claire Writes Music on YouTube. Everyone go and give her a subscribe because she's amazing.
Yeah, definitely subscribe.
Sure. It's funny because we've posted a few times, but I think people can tell that we're a couple at this stage. But it's unofficial. But it was, so the team was really just me and her, me animating and writing, my brother and a couple of other people doing voices, and then her on music. And that was essentially the crew. Yeah. And
you guys put out a great project, bro.
Her music is such a great part of it. You know what I mean? Like it's a proper cinematic score, and it's a Batman score, which is a high bar. You know what I mean? She did really well. Yeah, I hope she gets a lot of love from it as well, because it's one of her first like short film projects as a composer. I think it's such a great, like, I know she's been a musician for her whole life. She's a professional flautist, and she started doing composing at 28, quite late in the day. And it's so funny because she because we're a couple, she gets to see all the emails I get from people, and I keep getting emails from composers who are like, "Hey, I loved your film, man. I'd love to score the next one." And they're trying to steal my gig. You know what I mean? Like, and she gets so angry about it. But it's, I know that guy. We're friends on Instagram.
That's hilarious.
But I think it's really funny because they don't realize that. Firstly, it's like the score is amazing. So why would I want? I think it's just people taking their shot. Like they just want to take their shot. And it's always great to meet new artists and stuff. So I'm always like polite. And, oh yeah, right. But then there's a part of me that's, I can't wait to tell Claire. another person tried to.
Did she study a lot of Batman films? How long did it take her to get the feel for how you wanted your setting to sound in your short film?
Firstly, she came to Batman through me. She wasn't like a big Batman fan. Her sister's fiance is a big Batman fan as well. So it's like she and her sister both find themselves unfairly latched to Batman fanatics. She's like, oh, we can't escape Batman. And so she knew it was like really important to me for a long time. And then when I said, oh, would you do the score? She was like, yeah, of course. And then she saw the film, cut the film, and she was like, it's really good. So it's got to be a really good score. But she was like, I can't listen to any Batman. Like, I can't listen, because she loves Danny Elfman. Like, Danny Elfman's one of her. Like, she literally performed with Danny Elfman. She did. There was like one of those live Nightmare Before Christmas.
And so I've watched a couple of those.
Yeah, he was there as Jack. Being Jack, and she was playing the flute in the background. So she loves Elfman, but she was like, I can't listen to it because then it will inform it. And I think that was what I did as well, because I have this theory that people should, if you're going to make like an adaptation of something, you owe it to the original thing to not try and copy it too much. There's a kind of respect, I think, that comes. I think that's why Aliens is like the best sequel of all time, because he didn't just copy Ridley Scott's film. He was like, I love Ridley Scott's film so much that I'm going to do it the respect of doing something completely different. And I think we wanted it to be like, it felt appropriate, like it felt like Batman, but it didn't feel like, oh, that's the Hans Zimmer bit and there's the Junkie XL bit. You know, right. But it's weird that then when she did do the piece, it actually does feel really of a piece, doesn't it? It does feel like quite consistent. And I think I gave her a couple of examples of the type of scores I wanted to evoke, but they were things like Into the Spider-Verse and the Winter Soldier soundtrack for the fight scenes and things like that. And I think the Candyman soundtrack I played for her as well. So there's a bunch of stuff. Yeah. But not only that, but she not only did the Batman theme, she obviously did a Two-Face theme and a Scarface theme. And those are like really interesting. Like the Scarface one sounds like a twisted Godfather-y type thing. And then when Scarface dies and Arnold's there, and he's all like sad, she does like the same theme, but it's really high. So it's like this kind of, I like to think of it as like the tiniest violin playing just for Arnold. But it's again, it's the same character, but the same theme, but just sounds completely different. And then Two-Face, she did so many cool things, like this kind of alarm sound. I think she called it an alarm, where it's like, and it keeps coming back whenever he gets really angry. You know, that bit when he leaps out of the shadows is. And then I think my favorite bit in the whole film is that bit where the lightning strikes, the sound disappears, and then Harvey, runs at Batman, picks him up, and then drives him into a pillar. And when it does, Claire's soundtrack goes, just like if you had like an apocalyptic rave or something. It's just it's so cool. So there's a lot of like experimental stuff going in there as well. And then the Bat score, she just found that kind of and that was like, but she was terrified of it. She was like, when she first played it to me, she was like, don't have another one, you have to like this one, because it was such a big thing, and it was only a couple of notes. It's like a motif, and it's amazing, and it's so good. And I think she even used, she has access to these really cool sound libraries, and one of them is actually the Junkie XL drums and stuff. So there's actually some Junkie XL sounds in the score, which is amazing.
That's crazy.
But no, she did a good job, and I think
I agree.
It's so funny to me that now she's actually a Batman fan, which is actually really funny. like she knows all the characters on a first name basis. So every now and again, I'll just catch her going, "Oh, that's the Court of Owls, obviously." And I'm
that's awesome. That's awesome. So she just kind of backdoor became a Batman fan. That's pretty cool. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So what about
if you want to be my lover, you got to get with my friends. That's
got to. So what about the art direction, man? Because obviously I love your design for Batman. I'm a huge fan of the neon color scheme for Two-Face. Is it's awesome. So how long did it take you to, number one, just to get the character models down, and how long did it take you to just try to get that universe together? Because everybody has such a unique design, like I talked about earlier. Even with Scarface, Arnold, everybody feels lived in. Feels like it's, like I said, it's not copying, like it's not Batman, the animated series. But even though it's just a one-off short film, it feels like it's a lived-in universe. Yeah. So how long did it take you to get the feel for like how you wanted everybody to look?
Well, okay. So I'm actually working on, at the moment, I'm going to do a reel for Instagram, and I'll release it on YouTube as well. I'm going to do a video which is just me drawing like my version of Batman. And it'll just be like the decisions I made as to why I did this length of ears and this type of cowl and things like that. Like and I think I realized that the way I draw Batman has always been the same. And I think it's because like 10 years ago, I drew him for fun once, and I did it from memory, and that's just what I drew. So I didn't do it perfect. If you notice, like the way his cowl is, most cowls for Batman, they go up like that, and they're down, and then the chin is exposed. And I don't like that, because I think if he takes a punch, he's going to get knocked out, because the way a punch works is that if it's not the impact that knocks you out, it's your head turning that fast. Your brain like knocks into the corner of your skull, and that knocks you out. So just having a firm jaw isn't going to help. So that's where like the chin strap comes in. And then he has a kind of, I like to think of it as like a coffin shaped, it's like a coffin shaped mouth opening, and it makes it almost more like a helmet. Right. So basically it's all like your own personal aesthetic choices. And I think one thing I love about Batman in particular, but really it could be said of probably all the DC characters, less so than the Marvel characters, is that they are the most adaptable characters. Like any artist who works on them could do them completely differently. True. Like, but keep them true to their characters. Paul Dano's Riddler is still the Riddler. He doesn't look anything like, or he doesn't look anything like a certain version of the Riddler, or like my Two-Face doesn't look like Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face. But the fundamentals are right, whereas you couldn't really do a radical reimagining of Spider-Man necessarily, or Captain America or the Hulk. I think it's because they're very iconic. Marvel has all the icons, and then you've got Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman, who every time you see them, they look slightly different. But their personalities shine through. What they represent shines through. Like Wonder Woman could look different every time you see her, but she represents something. You know what I mean? Like, as long as she's got the kind of the eagle on her chest, and the hair, and you're like, oh, that's Diana, and she represents good and hope and that kind of thing. And I think with Batman, it's like when it came to Two-Face, that was like my little reference to Batman Forever, which was, I think, the first Batman film I ever saw in the cinema. And that was huge for me. And I love that film. I thought that the film, I thought Val Kilmer was a great Batman. I thought the film is really gothic, and it's really, also, it's funny. I think those films, those Schumacher films, weirdly like unfairly maligned because people didn't like how campy. And it's like, the one funny thing is that like the films that became before them were Tim Burton movies. So they were really Tim Burton-y, the emo goth arty films. And then Joel Schumacher, who I believe was a gay Hollywood director, he made this essentially drag film version of Batman. That's essentially what it is. Because one thing from being in my relationship with my girlfriend, I'm now a huge RuPaul's Drag Race fan.
Man, what? Yes, my mom loves that show. Yeah,
I love that show, and I watch it. I'm like, I'm following it, and I'm addicted to it, and so now I get like drag queen like eleganza, all the kind of language to do with it, and like serving a look and this kind of thing. And then you watch the Joel Schumacher films, and Jim Carrey is there in a full green unitard, and he's all sparkling. He's got this thing like that, and he is a drag queen version of the Riddler. It's just high camp, and I understand that it wasn't people's cup of tea back in the 90s, but it's no less legitimate an interpretation than a Tim Burton goth version. It's just that people were more societally able to go along with that one. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I think a latent homophobia in that thing. So it can't really defend Batman and Robin because it was just so shit. But in
it was trash. I'm serious.
You can still enjoy it. You can still enjoy it. It's great fun. Like, you can watch it with beers and friends, and it's a laugh.
It's the ice skate for me, man.
I think Batman Forever is fucking great. And it's so operatic, and I love, and that's where my love of Two-Face came from. Even though the Two-Face is like nothing like Two-Face, like he's constantly flipping the coin and disregarding it and all that kind of crap. And he's all acting like the Joker and stuff, and it's just not really. But that first scene when he's got the security guard and he first flips the coin and he's just this side of his head, and then he slowly reveals who he is. That just stuck with me, and that's where the glow in the dark stuff came from. Which was, there's a lot of glow-in-the-dark scenes, neon scenes, in the Schumacher movies. So that's my little reference. It's nothing like the Schumacher movies, but the glow-in-the-dark is like my little Easter egg of, I love that film, and I'm not going to apologize for it. so that's kind of how that came about. And also, once that image came to me with him stood there with half of his face like that, and then it being blue and red, and it being like about the polarity of political polarization and this kind of extremes, that he's just a character of extremes and he can't reconcile the two sides. And it's just like that imagery just came to me, and I was like, okay, now it has to be that, because it works too well. And I think that was how a lot of the decisions came about. Like Scarface only was in the film because Face had two gangs on either side of him. So the plot was reverse engineered, but in that way it worked quite well, because everything was because of questions and answers, questions that needed answers. So Batman's fighting goons. So who's the leader? Oh, it's Two-Face. Okay. Batman's fighting Two-Face. Two-Face has two gangs, the upper part of Gotham and the lower part of Gotham. So he can take the whole city. But then how did he get both gangs? He's obviously screwed over somebody else. So who's the gang? It could be some mobster. I could just do some ordinary Falcone-esque Rupert Thorne character, which would have been fun. But then there's this, then something clicks in my head when I'm like, wait a minute, I could do Scarface, and then they reflect each other. And then there was that horrible moment when I realized, oh, the film's going to be twice as long, because I'm already a year into making it, and it's supposed to be like, I've been telling Claire, who's going to do the score, that it's 7 minutes. That's what I've been saying to her. It's 7 minutes long. She's like, okay, that's good. And then Antonia, who's my girlfriend's sister's fiance, who loves Batman, she was like, she was talking to me over Christmas a couple of years ago, and I was like, I think I'm going to put the ventriloquist in the film. Like, it's going to make it twice as long. And I was like, I don't know how to tell Claire. And she was just, do it. Just do it. She's enabled me. She was like, you could make it like a part 1 and a part 2. I don't know, just split it in 2. And then when it came to the design of Scarface, it's one of those weird things where I'm surprised no one's done it already. Like maybe someone has, but he's always like a 1930s gangster, isn't he? And I made him more like a bit of like the kind of Russian gangster, but then also a little bit Tony Soprano. He's got that kind of, because the funny thing about gangsters is that the 20th century has come and gone. Goodfellas is about as much a cliche as some 1930s Al Capone type thing. So he's actually technically still wearing kind of period garb. He's still technically wearing like something that's like an old cliche. It's a kind of a cheesy stereotype for him to be in a tracksuit. And I was just like, why has nobody already done this? It's just, I was Googling it going, has anyone ever done like a Scarface that isn't dressed in a pinstripe suit? And it's like, not really. And so once that happened in my head, I was like, well, I've got to do it then. It has to happen. And that way it actually became quite easy to, it's questions and answers. And then for Arnold himself, I just drew him because in the animated series, he's a lot thinner and older. He's bald and he's got the glasses and he's very Mr. Scarface. And I decided to, because a lot of the original comic books with him, he didn't look quite like that. He had this kind of pyramid. He looked quite big and he had like curly hair, but he still had the glasses. So I tried to make it halfway between the two. And I made it as if Philip Seymour Hoffman was playing him. Like that kind of.
I knew that's what it was. I couldn't put my damn finger on it, but I knew that's what it was.
Philip Seymour Hoffman would have nailed that role. Like,
he would have. Yes.
He would have been so good. And he has that patheticness, but also you love him. And he's quite big. If he swung at you, it's funny that people were saying, like, some of the people were saying, like, oh, it's funny that Two-Face is fighting Batman. Even the ventriloquist lasts a little bit longer than the goons. He has a little fight. He actually takes a swing at Batman and then, like, almost gets him with the machine gun. And Batman obviously already has a plan to take him down. But I think they're the boss battles. You got to have it. And he's a rogue. So you got to give him the respect of making him last a little bit longer than his goons. But yeah, like Philip Seymour Hoffman he was tall. Like you look at Mission Impossible 3, like he's actually quite imposing. So I like the idea that like Arnold would be like this kind of pathetic character, but if he turned, maybe he could actually get the better of you. Because again, even he doesn't know what he could do next. So I kind of just went for that. And then I did the voice of Scarface and ventriloquist as well, which was a lot of fun because my girlfriend watched it and I keep forgetting that's you. You know what I mean? But it's just so much fun. It's another reason why you put him in the film. You put him in the film because he's so much fun. It probably would have been quite a po-faced film if you hadn't put Scarface in it. And also he helps the plot. It's only 15 minutes long, but if you ever need to understand what's happening, you just have Scarface say it. Because he's the type of character who'll just come out and say something.
And say it. Exactly.
Thank you. Like that one line that
expositional device. He's, what? You're going over there? Okay.
Because when Two-Face was like, yeah, I just used the man on the inside. He was like, a man on the inside. What do you? Oh, boom! And it comes. I was like, yeah. So, like I loved it so much.
Thanks, man.
That was my scene. Yeah.
Oh man, it's like getting whacked. Like it's again that comes with the Goodfellas thing. If you're gonna make him like a character from Goodfellas, you got to whack him like Joe Pesci, you know what I mean? And again, it informed how the scene was going to play out. If you're not treating him like a 1930s gangster, you're treating him like a 80s to 90s mafioso, then he's going to go down because he made a wrong move and somebody whacks him without him looking. And that's how it goes. And he even falls into the pose that Joe Pesci falls into in Goodfellas when he hits the ground. Because I always loved how the animated series of Batman, the filmmakers were clearly like really like cinephiles, and you would see so many little references to films that they liked, like Blade Runner and things, like just random things. And like even castings, like in Mask of the Phantasm, they've got the guy who plays Ellis from Die Hard playing essentially the same kind of asshole. It even looks like him. And then they have the guy who makes all the toys in Blade Runner is the guy who creates Hardak, the supercomputer in Batman the Animated Series. Like they just love films and they would just throw in references. So I was like, okay, I'll do like a reference to Goodfellas, but it'll be like subtle enough that maybe people won't notice it. But if they do notice it, they'll be like, oh, I see you. Okay, cool. You know, it doesn't ruin the plot, but it was something that I just really wanted to do. It made me really happy to, and I think it actually is like a surprising moment. Like I've heard some people say, I've heard a couple of friends of mine have been like, I actually gasped when his like head blew up. You know?
Me too. Yeah, I was shocked.
I was not expecting that at all.
Well, it's good. Again, it's that funny thing, isn't it, about not knowing what's going to happen in a film, and also not knowing what characters you're going to see. And it's nice to actually do something that actually, because Arnold has killed Scarface a few times in the show and the comics. I think one time he had like a sock.
Yeah, he did.
Socky or Socko or something like that. But yeah, I think he has definitely killed Scarface before, but he's never done it in that way, in that he actively conspired against him. And I had this idea that it's really because he's traded Mr. Scarface for Mr. Two-Face. He just, when it comes down to the idea of like choices, Two-Face has been like, Two-Face's thesis is, I'm going to take all or everyone's choices away, because your choices are what are making you unhappy. And poor old Arnold is just begging for someone to take his choices away. He's the perfect follower for Two-Face. He's just tell me what to do. Oh, kill Scarface? Okay, I'll kill Scarface and then I'll be free. And you tell me what to do. It's not really like it's not progress that he kills Scarface, because he's just surrendering himself up to Two-Face. And then of course Two-Face inevitably lets him down.
And was really about to blow him away. Like when he was like, is it over? Like me and my brother were talking about that and dying right before the podcast.
Yeah.
My man was about to blow his head off. I'm like, did you really have to do that? Arnold's kind of harmless.
There's a line that like some people laugh at, but I think there's a bit where he's looking at the coin and he goes, do I care? But it's not like a flippant, do I care? He's like asking the coin, do I care? And it's like the coin might tell him he does care. Like if it had gone good side up, he'd be like, all right, cool. Yes.
Right, we're good.
You're safe. I love you. Everything's going to be fine. So it's not like he's not being an asshole when he says, do I care? He genuinely wants to know.
Exactly, because like you said, because both of those guys, like I said, they've totally given up like their sense of, I guess, decision making. Like I said, that whole thing with making decisions, they've given that up to some inanimate object or just chance. So it's, that whole thing is repeated throughout your short film. But one thing I wanted to pay attention to, I don't know how many times like I rewound that scene. It's dead in the middle of that big fight. Both Bruce and Two-Face are throwing hands at this point. We just hear, and by the way, the sound work of the fist hitting the skin, that sounds so good. Like I was
thanks,
wow.
man. Some people, it's not loud enough for them. Some people like they want it to be like kung fu. Like there's like the most common critique you get on the comments is liked the film, but the punches should have been louder. It's like, I like kind of I like stuff where it almost feels like an actual punch, where it's yeah. But I'm glad you liked it, man, because we did work quite hard on it.
No, I loved it. And one of the parts, I think I can't remember exactly how it happens. I think Batman gets knocked back or he rolls back. And then I think lightning hits and it hits him, and then he does like the iconic.
I was like a little kid. I felt like I was 10 again. I was like, yes. And then even at the end, when he was on the rooftop, I said, "You beautiful mother." I said, yes. Man. Somebody gets it, man.
I mean, I was excited. Like I must have watched that scene at least like 15 times, because the first time I was like, no, he didn't. I'm like, I'm tripping.
So you gotta go back and see if you saw what you seen.
Just go back and see it again.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, it's like only a couple of frames, you know what I mean? It just happened quite suddenly. Yeah, you're right, because I think I saw another fan film years ago where they recreated the pose on top of the roof. So I knew that somebody had done it before. It was in live action. And so in a way I was like, okay, I want to do the credit scene homage at the end. And then it's like that one bit where he's like with the cape like that. That's like my extra. That's to go even further. I'm like, nobody's done that. Nobody, I don't think anyone's done awesome. That pose. And to actually work out how does he get into that pose? Like he gets elbowed in the face and then he spins around like that.
Yeah,
right.
And it was done so well.
And it wasn't like okay, here's the lead up and there it is. It was just like if you caught it.
You caught it. Oh man, it was beautiful.
Oh, that was crazy.
Yeah,
I think I yelled when I saw that.
It's really nice to know that, like, it's been really nice to know that a lot of people have said that they love that moment, and it's nice to know that it didn't take people out of the story, if you know what I mean, because it's quite a serious sequence, isn't it? And it's followed immediately by Two-Face, like pile driving him into the column. So it's not even like a very badass moment. Batman doesn't then come back and throw a punch. No. So I'm just really happy that people like that. It's not just because the funny thing is, like, my brother actually talked me out of another reference, which was, well, not even a reference, but I was going to do the font of the end credits in the animated series font, because I couldn't find a font that looked good. And I was like, I guess I'll do that. And I showed it to my brother and he was like, don't, because it's your own thing. You can put homages in, but don't do that because it's different. You are doing your own thing and you deserve to have your own font, which is a funny thing to hear from a grown man. You deserve your own font. So I basically just looked up some other kind of like semi-art deco-y fonts, and I found something that seemed like restrained. And if you look at it in the wrong way, it might actually look like the animated series one, but it isn't. And so those moments where we did throw in references, I had to think about it, because there was a part of me that thought, I hope people don't go, I loved your film except for the references, because it took me out of it, or it seemed like a cheap gimmick or something. But it seems obviously we all grew up loving those iconography. Like, I watched animated series Batman when I was a kid, and then I forgot about it. Like, I genuinely, there were like years of my life I completely forgot about the animated series because I was a kid when I watched it, and all I could remember was just him stood on the roof and the lightning bolt. That's all I could remember. Right. And I think there's this one shot of him when he's been gassed by Scarecrow, and it's a shot of him falling into Scarecrow's mouth, and that just haunted my dreams. Like, I was always thinking about him falling into Scarecrow's mouth. And I think I had a toy of Clayface that could like fire a little metal ball.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I had one of those when I was a kid. And then when I was in uni, I saw it on a shelf, the DVD, and I was like, I love that show. I'm going to go get it. And I watched it, and it became the way I went to sleep at night, was that I would watch 3 episodes of the animated series to go to bed, because of the way the backgrounds are done in that show. I don't know if you know about the history of the art process of that show, but they were the first cartoon to use black paper. Yes, they used black paper, and because it's easier to just paint windows. And so in a way, it's like a warm glass of milk at the end of the day, because it's so physically dark.
It is.
The visuals are so physically dark. So I would pop it on. You got beautiful voice talent, you got beautiful music, you got amazing artistry, and I would just lie in bed watching it. And this went on for like years. And so I must have watched the animated series through 20 times. So I went from completely forgetting about it to just like completely loving it again. And so it's fun to think about like the way we remember these shows, because everyone's so, especially now, because everyone's so obsessed with nostalgia, and that's why they're bringing back Michael Keaton, because it's so nostalgic.
This is true, yeah.
But it's funny because it can go wrong. It can go wrong because it sometimes can be done flippantly, or it can be done cynically, and
just for a cash grab.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like just having it there isn't enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I feel like I can do an animated series reference because I've watched it so often. Like, I know it so well that I feel like I can do a reference to it. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't do a reference to, some people are like, you should do Red Hood next. And I'm like, I didn't read Under the Hood. Like, I don't really know. There are some blind spots in my Batman knowledge. Like, I don't think I've ever read a comic book with Damian Wayne in it. I don't think I've ever read, and a lot of these are fan favorite characters. I don't think I've ever read a Deathstroke story. And these are the characters.
I know I've never read a Deathstroke.
Everyone's like, I love him. But I think they love those characters because they just look cool. You know, like, Deathstroke is so awesome.
Just to have a Robin with a sword, that's pretty cool. So
it is. Exactly. I'd love to actually, but I couldn't do a reference to that character without I'd have to buy 20 books to feel like I'm not an imposter. You know what I mean?
No, I get it.
Yeah, so Two-Face and Ventriloquist and Batman, I feel like I can confidently talk about them and then the same with the animated series references and things, and then the references to Schumacher. There's even like a friend of mine, Tom, even picked up on a Nolan reference where he was like, the TV that's like in the middle of the room and you got the strip lights. It's like a TV on a little stand. It's like the scene in The Dark Knight when the Joker first shows up to talk to the mob boss. And he was like, I see what you did there. It's like a bit of a Christopher Nolan-y thing. And I'm like, that is what it is. I wanted to do a Batman the Animated Series, but in a Nolan-esque landscape. And I think
No,
that's
I
kind
like
of
that. No,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
because go ahead, Josh. If you were to say.
Oh yeah, and also this like and also what was the part? I also really like the part where you put like the communicator inside the like the horn.
Oh
yeah.
yes, that
Yeah,
was really
Yeah, that
good.
was
With
dope.
the and then
yeah,
you showed like the line, the tech lines from it, like how it
Yeah.
actually works and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really dope.
Yeah, it was
yeah, yeah.
a bit of creative
It
license there, I think, because would you be able to see it? Like maybe it's inside it, but it was that almost like Batman Beyond, red computer stuff all in his suit, and it's almost like a proto version of that. I feel like you could also do that. If somebody set off like a shotgun next to his head, you'd see like a red flash of him like noise canceling, so you can't like deafen Batman because he's got like noise canceling shit in his horns, so stuff like that. So I love the idea of like when I had that idea, it was actually just because I'd put that scene together and it was like we need to understand that he's listening to them. So you could just have him being it doesn't quite, it's okay, but it doesn't quite work. So if you have him go like that and there's a little kind of visual, it could be like just this bit of pure like cinematic creative license of it's actually all that stuff is actually inside, but we can see it because we're the audience or something like that. I don't know, but I think someone once said it's like the rule of cool. You know what I mean? If something is kind of cool, then it gets by. Same with the coin grabber. Like it's just cool enough that you don't really question it.
Right. It's just like have some suspension of belief. You know what I'm saying? Like he's already running around in a very uncomfortable costume that I don't even want to know how he got in it. So it's just like, so I mean, come on, y'all. You know, suspension of belief, man. But
Can you imagine how rank the inside of the cowl must be after a night?
Gosh.
Like a used condom or something, like just absolutely rank. Just this kind of
this is like wild. Right.
Oh, it would be the worst. It would be the worst. Oh my God. Like, does he have a new cowl every day? Does he like throw it in a big bin full of cowls? It's like
I hope he has one for every day.
Never being worn again.
Yeah, I hope he has like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because they'll be like, man, y'all realize Batman kind of stinks, you know, like he has a smell, you know.
So Batman's Batmusk.
It would be so funny to see like a film where you actually see like Bruce Wayne's grooming regime, because Bruce has to be like, I have to be a billionaire playboy, which means I can't stink. So it's like he actually would have to consult like stylists and okay, what do I do? I need to wear this, I need to do this, I need to shower, I need to do this, I need to trim. And it's like those parts of everyone just thinks, oh, he's Bruce, so he just walks outside and he's Bruce Wayne. It's like, no, he came home at 7 in the morning.
To wash.
He's exhausted. You know what I mean? He has to somehow then go out and pretend like he hasn't been out all night, sweating his balls off.
Right.
Exactly.
But those are the kind of things that I find really interesting. Like I'd love to see like a film that just dealt with the logistics. You know?
Oh yeah. All like the intricacies of just the suit and just reminding everybody that it's a guy in a suit and this particular suit has all these technological advancements and yada.
I'd love to see a film where he comes home, we see him come drive the Batmobile into the Batcave and then immediately fall asleep. Like he's got a cot and he just needs to get an hour. He just immediately falls asleep. Like he's like, take the shit off,
just like, when do you
fall asleep?
Right.
1 hour. You know what I mean? Just 1 hour and then Alfred wakes him up. That would be amazing. Just to see that. We have never seen it. I've never seen Batman fall asleep.
The closest I've seen to anything like, you know, remotely like how realistic it would be, I think it was in the Nolan movies, because they showed Bruce take off the suit and he had cuts and stuff everywhere and he had to sew himself back up and all that. It shows that man, like he getting hurt out here for real. So it's rough. So one thing I want to know though, so are we getting any Batman content in the future? Do you see yourself jumping back into the animators chair at all?
Thing is, it's always going to be really tempting. At the moment, it's like I'm keeping a party line of we're taking a big old break, big old nap, mainly because I've done things before, creative ventures, where it's gone really well and then I jump immediately into the next thing and then I burn myself out. Like I'm exhausted. I spent 2 years making this thing. So obviously I'd love to do more Batman stuff. Like I'd love to. I have villains that I really love that I think I could bring things to, because again, the Two-Face and the Scarface thing were just like years of me thinking like, oh, if I did a story with those characters, what would it be? And I have several of those in my head, so I could definitely see myself doing it, but not anytime, but I definitely will do more animation. So I'll probably do a bunch of other stuff. Like I'll probably release some animation in a year's time, and everyone will be like, "It's not Batman." I just hate it. You know, it'll be the Trouble second album, or I will make another Batman thing, and it'll be like, "Oh, it's not as good as the first one," and then everyone will be like the backlash will begin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The troubled second album. But no, I could definitely see doing more. And on Instagram, I'm just going to be drawing Batman and Batman characters. If you go on the Instagram right now, there's designs for various characters that aren't in the film. Like I've got like Green Lantern and Hawk Girl. And,
I saw that. I love that Green Lantern.
Poison Ivy and all these things. Like I just like designing. I like coming up with my own versions of characters. And I think it's because growing up, I was never that type of arty kid, because I really envy these kids. They're great. You see them on Instagram all the time. I was never that type of kid that could copy something perfectly. Like people who are like so into the Bruce Timm style that they can draw it perfectly, and I can't. Like it actually took a long time to get that pose right of him like that.
Yeah,
because my Batman doesn't look exactly like the Bruce Timm Batman has shark ears. They go back like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, I was never very good at that. So my way of doing it was like, I'll do like the Stephen Trumble version of this character and try and respect the character as much as possible. So I think I'm just going to keep doing that for a while. And I don't think this whole thing came about because I was drawing Batman for fun, drawing Batmobiles for fun. And it's never not going to be fun for me. So I'm going to keep doing it. I'm sure I'll definitely do some more Batman stuff at some point. I could definitely do it, but there's no announce the sequel. Also, the other thing is, because it's so nice that people like this film, but I'd hate to get into that Marvel movie thing of what's the sequel and who's the villain.
Yeah.
Like don't you just hate that about the Matt Reeves film? It's so good. And now the internet is all just, okay, so it has to have the Court of Owls and Mr. Freeze and Hush. And you're going to ruin whatever this next film is by talking like this, because you're so obsessed with knowing what it's going to be and then trying to affect it and trying to make it happen. And the reason that film came out so was because firstly, that film just picked characters that it didn't need to pick. You didn't need to put the Penguin in there. You didn't need to put Catwoman in there. The Joker's in there. He just did it. They like Catwoman had already been in a recent film. Like Anne Hathaway had been Catwoman. It wasn't like we were overdue seeing Catwoman. But he was just like, I'm just going to make a good story with Catwoman in it. And now it's because it's done well. Suddenly everyone's obsessed with what it's going to be and how it's going to be like that. So it's not for a second would I ever assume that I have anywhere near that level of attention on me. But I'd hate to say, oh yeah, I'll do another Batman story like next year. And then a bunch of people start wanting to know what's in it. I think
Is the Joker in it? Is the Joker, please?
I have an idea of how I would do the Joker, but it would have to be in like the 5th or 6th story if I ever did it, you know what I mean? And he wouldn't even do anything. Like I had this idea, which is, you ever seen like Gremlins 2?
Yeah. All kind of types of gremlins. Yeah.
When they're all inside the building, and then there's that one gremlin who learns how to talk because he's been experimented on, and he's got like glasses and stuff. And then there's this big huge party at the end where it's basically almost like the world's ending, and they're all just having this kind of essentially fucked up New Year's Eve party. And he starts singing New York, and he's and that is the Joker to me. I'd be like, the world's ending, and he starts singing a song. And that would be that's the only way I would even think about putting him into a story. It's just he doesn't even care, like he wouldn't even be a plot. It would just be Joker, just like Nero dancing while Rome burns. Essentially, that's what it would be.
I like that.
That's about as far as I could take the character. I don't think I can bring anything, because other people have done it so much better. Like even other fan films and stuff have done the Joker really well because they like and get the character. Whereas I love the character. I love Mark Hamill as the character. But I don't feel like I can bring anything specifically new to him, if you know what I mean, in terms of writing. But yeah, no, I think I'll probably, if I do make another Batman thing, I'll do the same thing I did this time and just let you guys know a month before it drops. So I'll spend 2 years making it. In one day, it'll just be like, oh, by the way, Broken Promise Part 2 is coming out in a week, and we'll be like, oh, yeah, you know, just because I crave that kind of influence on people.
That's awesome.
That would be amazing.
Hey, we wouldn't have it any other way.
Very political answer.
Oh no, that's perfect. Like I said, we wouldn't have it any other way, because you already know how we feel about over spoiling and all of that stuff. So no, that'll be great. And regardless of if it's like Batman or not, we really love what you're doing. like I said, the story that you created, it seemed like it was really carefully curated. Not too many cooks. It was just great storytelling. At the end of the day, we love narrative, and we just can't wait to see what else the Stephen Trumble universe has to offer. I'll tell you what, can't wait to see it.
Release the Trumble cut.
Yes.
The Trumble cut.
The Trumbleverse.
Oh man,
Seriously.
thank
Yeah.
you very much. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no
yeah.
problem.
And
oh, go ahead, Josh.
oh yeah, but yeah, definitely tell us about your 50 Uses of the Word Love podcast and some of your
for sure.
like and some of your like what made you become a comedian and how'd you get into stuff like that?
The thing that made me become a comedian is that I suffer from depression. I went through a breakup about 5-6 years ago, and I just went like that. And in climbing back out of it, I went on antidepressants, things like that. And I think I'd always wanted to do stand-up, but I always assumed it was just something that like other people did, like funny people do. You know what I mean? Everyone thinks they're funny, but nobody actually is funny. Or like people tell me I'm really funny, and that's not what makes a comedian. What makes a comedian is usually like a huge degree of delusional patience and kind of stamina for failure. But I made a decision to give it a go, and I spent like a year writing in a notebook, and I would go to comedy clubs and just haunt the back of them, and I would go by myself. I would go in secret, kind of like Batman Broken Promise. I spent a whole year just in secret, going to comedy clubs and just sitting there and not talking to anyone, just with a beer and thinking maybe I could do it. And I went and I did it. And I did before pandemic. I haven't gigged in like a year, which is really sad. I really want to get back out there. But I had 4 really great years of doing stand-up and loving it. And I do a lot of material that's about my mental health. And I'm very pro or demystifying, I guess. Demystifying mental health and talking about that. I think one of the first jokes I did, which really landed, because I would have a lot of jokes, your average like talking about your dick jokes that people do, which I love. I do plenty of those myself. But I think the first joke that got big, that really seemed like it was like my true self, was a joke where I said, I suffer from depression, which is like having gonorrhea, in that you wouldn't know that I've got it until I've ruined your life. And that was the joke. Wow. And it's kind of that was the moment when I was like, oh, I see, you can just be like, there's this kind of, you're being vulnerable, and it actually is a catharsis. It actually makes people happy. Yeah. And I would even sometimes I'd have other comedians come up to me after a set and go, oh, I really liked your set. And by the way, I'm on antidepressants and I've never told anyone, which is a huge deal to tell someone that. I'm like, wow, fuck, that's amazing. Yeah. And then 50 Uses for the Word Love is a podcast which I set up years ago, which is me talking about how weird it is that we have so many different meanings for the one word. And it's almost like the old saying about indigenous peoples, like they have 50 words for snow, whereas we have 50 uses for one word. We have this thing that could be the way you feel about skiing, and the way you feel about your mum, or the way you feel about your wife, but also, oh, I love froyos. And so I typed up this list of all these different meanings. And then I would get guests on, mostly other comedians. And some of them are like doing really well now, or on TV. So it's actually cool. There's actually some really cool people on there. But yeah, we did words like patriotism. We did words like nostalgia. We did words like finding the one. We did some words which have no English translation, which is really cool. So there was one which is the word Nas. N-A-Z, not the rapper. Obviously, I would love to get Nas on. If Nas could have come on to talk about the word Nas, that would have been the best. Crazy. I would have been straight to the top of the charts in the podcast. But that is a word that means the pride that you feel when somebody else loves you. You know what I mean? I know it's great. Well, it's such a complicated kind of thing. You know what I mean? And we only got to 17. So we've done 17 episodes. And then I met my girlfriend. So now I'm like in love and have no time to make a podcast. Yeah, exactly. So if there's one thing about making a podcast about love, it's a lonely man's game. But
I get it.
As is stand-up comedy, but it's something that I'm very proud of. And the good thing is I'm definitely going to keep doing it, because all I have to do is get to 50 before I die. You know what I mean? So we're on 17 now, but like I could be 45 when we do the last episode.
Man, let me tell you something. These things add up. I would have never thought, what is this, Marcus? Episode 89? Like,
Yeah, we
88?
up there now. I
This
was
is
like,
crazy.
wow. So yeah,
So I'm telling you, Stephen, it gets up there after a while, man. It's just
yeah,
like,
man.
whoa.
Yeah, so keep at it, man.
Yeah, just
do it
keep
at
at
your
it.
pace.
Yeah,
And
man.
I'll be honest, man, I didn't know I didn't know that I would need to ever understand anything about the, how did you put it, the male G spot. Like I didn't think I was just like, wait a second, what? That's a
During the
thing.
21st century, bro, man.
But thanks to you, now I have some information about that. So
Yep.
that's what's up, man.
I
Appreciate it.
love telling people that. My favorite thing. My favorite thing to tell people.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, now we know. So we definitely appreciate that. But
Again, it's all
but
about
that's
being
it.
vulnerable.
You gotta let it go. And that's another thing, like just asking, like, when did you get to the point where you were just like, because like you said, being a comedian, since we're on the topic, like we've discussed it with a couple of other guys and they're both stand-ups as well. So for you personally, was this something, I know you watched a lot of guys before you got the chance to do it yourself, but when did you get to that kind of groove where it wasn't just foreign and scary to possibly bomb in front of a ton of people on stage?
Okay. It's always scary.
Oh, wow.
It's never not scary. And because I haven't done it in a while, this is actually an interesting time to talk to me about it, because now that the Batman thing is finished, that was taking up so much of my brain and my time, I can actually go back and start doing it. But it used to be, because I used to be gigging about 4 to 5 nights a week, open mics, you know what I mean? Like I never really, I was like towards the top of open mic level. It takes 8 years to get anywhere in stand-up, especially in like London. And I was gigging so often that I was in a groove. But if I took a week off, I'd have terrible stage fright coming back in.
Wow.
And people do that. There's a reason why comedians, like, they always have to take a huge dump before they go on stage, or they have to pee. Because I used to do this joke where I was like, I often get taken short, so like having to go to the loo before a show. And a friend of mine once explained to me why that is. And it's because of evolution, which is that if you're being chased by a predator, you piss yourself and you shit yourself, because it means you get lighter, which means you can get away faster. And I'm saying to the audience, so even though I'm up here on stage talking about my dick and we're all having like a semi-reasonably okay time, my body thinks that you are going to kill me. Like, but then it's the thrill. It's a thrill as well. And you leave almost as if every time you get off stage, you feel like you need like a brandy. But then if you kill, it feels amazing. It's like one of the best feelings. I think some of the best feelings I've ever had have been like, there was this one gig that I did, which was actually not really my kind of thing, but then it was so much fun, which was I did a roast battle. And I think it's online. I think it was in Edinburgh, and I got invited to do the roast battle in Edinburgh. And I was there with a really good friend of mine, Jamie Allerton, who does really dark material, or he has no line, like he's completely fine. And I have this kind of on-stage persona of being quite approachable and like a bit loud and a bit, but not like overly, almost like low status. And we both just slayed, and there was like no holds barred, and we just did all these jokes. And it's the first time in my entire life where I felt like the audience was like a pack of braying dogs. Like it felt like the energy level in the room was insane. It was such a weird feeling of going for blood, of just like, I was like, yeah, keep hitting him. And then he would hit me. And then it was like that. And it just became this kind of amazing kind of thing of, I don't think I've ever felt that before, but it's so scary. It's always scary. And I think comedians were often quite neurotic people. I'm sure your friends would agree. And I think that we go on stage. When I went on stage for the first time, my thought was, if it doesn't feel right, I'll just never do it again. You know what I mean? And you do it on the off chance that it feels right. Because if I'd gone up there and it had just been awful, and I think I half died and I half killed on my first go. Like I did okay. Like I got some laughs and I died. So I didn't get a big head, but I also didn't feel like, oh, I'm never doing that again. So, and I think that you get to the point where you start wanting to embrace the dying. If you die on stage, then you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is a learning exercise. This is something that like, and also for me, I was such a shy kid growing up, and I've always had a problem with feeling embarrassed. That was like a big thing in my kind of psychology growing up. I feel like this is a bit of an overshare, but it is true. I had a lot of kind of body shame and kind of feeling of feeling embarrassed. And going up on stage has taught me how to be embarrassed, if that makes any sense. And I think as a result, it's actually made me a better person in so many other ways, like right down to being in a relationship, because I actually feel like I've learned how to deal with shame. You know what I mean? Because if you go up on stage,
that's a big thing.
If you go up on stage and tell a joke and nobody laughs, you're like, oh fuck. People saw that. So sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night and you go, oh my God, there were so many people there. And they all saw it. They all saw how badly I did. But I think it was something that I had been pushing away most of my life, of trying to avoid embarrassment. And then, as you say, I go up on stage and start talking about the male G-spot or any other thing, or antidepressants, things that some people are uncomfortable talking about or hearing about. Like, I've never done a joke about, because there's like a cliche of the comedians who are women have to put up with all the time of, oh, women comedians, they just talk about their periods, man. And it's I sometimes I really want to do a bit on stage where I'm like, I want women to talk about periods, because I need to know what the fuck is going on. I have no concept. Like, I need the information. Like, I genuinely don't know. Like, why is that not the most interesting thing in the world?
Talk about,
uncomfortable about it. Yes, talk about it. Please talk about it. I basically taught myself how to kind of embrace being vulnerable. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, of comedians, as they have to be this kind of savage, like they go up on stage and they act cocky, and and some of the best are like that, but it's not nearly all. Even like someone like Bill Burr, it can be incredibly vulnerable, you know what I mean, on stage and in his podcast and things like that. So I think that, again, I've talked myself into a spiral here, but yeah, no, it took a while to get fully comfortable on stage, and I do lose it if I go away from it for too long. So it will be, when I go back to doing it like this year, it'll probably be like starting again. I feel like I've forgotten all my jokes. I have 4 years worth of jokes and I can't remember them because it's been so long since I did it. So it's scary. I'm gonna have to relearn it all. I think you never get over it. I'm sure that if Jerry Seinfeld died on stage, he'd be scared too. It happens. It's scary.
One thing that I find interesting, I've listened to a lot of podcasts and the comedians have talked to a number of comedians, and they say that it's like akin to working out, like literally going to the gym. Like, you got to flex that muscle and get on stage and figure out, okay, does this joke work? Cool, and try to build an act as you're going. So yeah, so I think
you're absolutely right. It's a muscle. You got to keep it going. I think I'm very lucky that in my relationship that she's like really supportive of the comedy and stuff. She's not like, it's not like I got a girlfriend and she was like, now go and get a real job. You know what I mean? Like, she is a musician, so she understands gigging. She understands doing something foolish that, you know, but then being really good at it, and like, she's very supportive of that. And so I think she would love me to go and do it again. I think it's me that's like scared to do it, because again, you're right, it would actually be like going to the gym after not working out for 2 years, which the first couple of days are going to be pretty rough.
But then once you get into it, it's like that, you're gonna fall right back in.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. Once I go up on stage and get a laugh, I'll feel fine.
There you go. Exactly.
That's how it goes. And that's how it happens with the stage fright. Like, before you go on, you get a laugh, you feel fine. Once you got a laugh, you're okay. Because until you get a laugh, you're like, this audience might hate me. And the second you get a laugh, you just go, oh, thank fuck. Okay.
Right.
And sometimes it takes a minute to get there.
Man, oh my goodness. Like I said, I couldn't. That's why I really admire guys that do it, because like all the other guys here, like, I'm huge on words. Like, I love storytelling, I love narratives, and I love music. Like, I'm a huge hip hop fan and all of that kind of stuff. And I think that comedy is in the same realm, because there's a lot of different beats and a lot of different pauses and ways that you tell certain stories in order to get that reaction from the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I completely agree.
Yeah, like when you were telling your joke with the male with the anal thing. Like there was a part when you told it and then you ran off stage, and like, that was the break for the audience to get the joke and laugh and all of that kind of, and then you came back and continued to tell us. I'm like,
that was like my opening joke for the year, was go up on stage, ask if anyone knows where the male G-spot is, and then if somebody in the audience says the arsehole, I go, okay, thanks, and I walk out the room.
Right.
And I always used to say, if I was a true comedian, I wouldn't come back. That would be the end of it. Like that, but I always do come back and then do the rest of the bit. But part of me is just, I wish I could just leave.
And they were like, wow, he was serious.
Like that's what Andy Kaufman would have done. You know what I mean?
Yes, completely. Yes, exactly. I mean,
but I completely agree, because if you look at someone like Sam Kinison or Chris Rock, the kids of preachers, so they've got like that kind of preacher oratory sermonizing. So again, it's very musical. Like I think a lot of my favorite, there was a bit, I have this joke where I realized I'd copied Patton Oswalt, but it wasn't the joke. It was the way he said it I'd copied. Isn't that weird? It was like one of his old jokes where he was talking about, it's not the type of joke he would do anymore, but there was a bit where he does this bit where he talks about Uncle Touchy's naked puzzle basement or something like that. It's like some weird pedophile joke, but he would be like, Uncle Touchy's naked puzzle basement, like that, and he would sing it, and he would go, you won't wear a shirt and you'll cry, and that's like the end of the joke. It's like the type of joke that he wouldn't do anymore, because he's gotten a lot more woke in a good way. But I did a joke where I did a joke about how I was on a dating app, and there was a woman, this actually happened, where her description said that her job was a reluctant childminder, which I thought, I want to know the end of that story. And I would do this bit where I would say that, and then I'd be like, it sounds like my new favorite reality TV show, reluctant childminder. And then the tag was always, she takes a nap and they die. That was the line. Wow. But I realized I basically stole his song, but completely different lyrics, but I stole his song. She takes a nap and they die. You'll not wear a shirt and you'll cry. Just like
because it's a way, a pattern of the way certain guys say things. That's why one of my favorite comedians of all time is George Carlin, because he has this real, like I said, he has this pattern that he uses. Like he'll get into this thing where he's describing something and he'll break it down. He'd be like, and it's like this and that and it's really, I won't say like hip hop-esque, but it's like the way he breaks down certain topics and rolls them out. It's just so cool. And I know for my viewers and listeners that have no idea who George Carlin is, they don't know what I'm talking about, but it's amazing. So for all of our viewers and listeners, please go watch some George Carlin, one of the greats.
He was amazing, and he came across as like a really nice guy as well, like cynical. Like he did not have faith that we were going to make it to the end of the road, but in doing so, I think he realized that he also wanted to be a kind person, a sweet person. I think he comes across like that. I love that about him. He was great. Yeah.
Oh yeah, same.
Good idol to have, I think.
Oh yeah, definitely one of the greats. But yeah, one of the biggest things about you, like I said, whether it's in animation or comedy, we're just, like I said, we're definitely fans, man. And we're excited to see.
So kind of you.
Oh, you're welcome. And we're just excited to see what you come out with. And it doesn't have to be tomorrow, but whenever you put it out, we'll definitely be in your corner for sure.
Thanks, man. I'd happily just come back and chat shit about geeky stuff. So,
thanks
for getting in touch. This kind of thing is like dream come true. Like, just some people want to talk to me about Batman for 3 hours. It's like, okay, great. This is my this is basically what I wanted to happen. So it's perfect.
Awesome, man.
I could spend all my life being invited on other people's podcasts. That would be like, if that could be a job, I'd do it.
Oh, you're welcome. Completely. It's been a blast. Like I said, and you're more than welcome to come back at any time. Like it's been amazing.
And, and thanks for plugging the podcast as well, the 50 uses for the word love. Really proud of it. So yeah, if anyone wants to go and listen to that, please do. Yeah, there's some good stuff. It's a different thing every time. Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for talking about the comedy as well. You've actually
No problem.
researched me. That's really sweet.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, we definitely try to do our due diligence when it comes to
we do our homework.
So. Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we stalked you a little bit.
I'm just glad it didn't start and your first question was, why does Two-Face be physically imposing to Batman when Batman is clearly the more like that?
We're not those guys.
If that had been the first question, I would have been like, okay.
So it's going to be that kind of night. All right. Nah, man, not like that at all. You already see we're just huge nerds here, man. Like same as you. So one of the last things before we go, we just want to make sure that we get your stuff out there, that a lot of people see your art and see all the good stuff you guys have been working on for the past couple of years. So definitely let our viewers and listeners know where they can find all of your work, your website, your YouTube channel. Tell them where they can view your short film. All of that good stuff.
Fantastic. Okay, so the short film, The Batman Broken Promise, which is the first animation that we've made, that is on Stephen Trumble Animation, which is YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And please go see it. And then if you like it, tell people about it. You can write reviews, you can do fan art, send to reactors, do your own reactions. Just don't copy it and put it on other sites, because that's not cool, man. You know what I mean? It happened the other day, and I'm like, that's not cool. You can't just take somebody's film. I spent 2 years on that. So if you watch the film and you like it, just send people to the YouTube. Just send them, because we want as many people to see it as possible. And it's so great when people write a comment and let us know that they liked it. And it's exactly what we wanted, really, was just to know that Batman fans liked it. So you can see that there. On Instagram, I'm going to be doing a bunch of behind the scenes stuff and some extra artwork. And I'll probably just keep making Batman artwork for the next year or so, just nonstop probably. So you can follow me there. On Twitter, I'm at Stephen Trumble, which is mostly more just me being me, bit of comedy stuff. You can also follow 50 Uses for the Word Love. That's on Podbean and all the other, I think it's on Spotify even. And we have an Instagram for that, which is at 50 Uses for the Word Love. And there's got to be something else. Oh yeah, I guess if you follow me on Twitter and you're in London or other places in England, you might see that I've got a gig or something. And so please come and see me do that. And if you want to see footage, there's various sets on YouTube that you can find. But yeah, that's pretty much it. But yeah, thanks so much for supporting the film and for asking me on. And it's basically just me drawing pictures for 2 years with nobody waiting for it or expecting it. And then Claire did this amazing score, which took her like 3 months from Christmas. And we just put so much like heart into it. And the fact that people like it and that we're getting pretty much like almost uniformly positive comments is so wonderful. So yeah, just get it out there and tell people about it. That's all we want, really. So thank you.
Awesome. You were so very welcome, and we'll definitely do all of that. So no worries. Like I say every week, we will put all of that information in the description below. Joshua and Marcus, guess what time it is?
Shameless promotion.
Shameless promotion. Oh.
Yes.
By Chad Singleton.
By Chad Singleton. Yeah, so it is just every week, guys. It is our shameless promotional. So you can catch this amazing podcast as well as all of our other wonderful podcast episodes on our website. And that website is scoreroundtablepod.fandomlim.com. And one more time, that is scoreroundtablepod.fandomlim.com. And you can also catch all of our episodes on YouTube, guys, of the same name, the Score Roundtable Podcast. So go ahead and check that out, guys. And we're also all over social media. So you can go on our Instagram, you can go on our Twitter of the same name, Square Roundtable Podcast, and you can go and friend us in that pesky Facebook group that we have that needs to be resurrected. So if you guys wouldn't mind, please get over there and friend us and talk to us so we can have somebody there besides our relatives. That would be really great. We would super duper. It would definitely be nice, guys. So Well, with that being said, I would love everyone, including our wonderful guests for the evening, to introduce themselves before we go. And as always, I am your host, Chad Singleton.
#no.
And I am Marcus.
And I'm Stephen Trumble. #Batman Broken Promise.
Awesome. And this has been the Score Roundtable podcast, guys. We are out. Peace out, y'all.